Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices is made possible in part by Allstate, the Searle Funds at the Chicago Community Trust, and CIBC.
Good evening y bienvenidos to Chicago Tonight Latino Voices. I'm Michael Puente, reporter with WBEZ Chicago. Thank you for sharing part of your weekend with us. On the show tonight, Illinois communities are taking action on climate change. We'll talk with local activists about what it'll take to get the state to a greener, cleaner future. And after a 30-year career with the city, the head of business affairs and consumer protections is stepping down. Hear about her work and how her family's journey to the United States shaped her perspective. After years of renting, a group of street vendors are now owners of a shared kitchen. Reporter Johanna Hernandez has the story.
If we don't do something about it, it's going to be done to us. And I would rather go out with a fight than sit here and allow something to happen to me.
And Humboldt Park natives MARISA DÍAZ-ARCE and BRIANNA RAMIREZ-SMITH give us La Ultima Palabra on why they say supporting small businesses saves communities. First off tonight, wild weather events in the first half of 2021, everything from droughts and flooding to heat domes and blizzards across the country have focused attention on the effects of climate change. And here in the Chicago area, Black and Latino neighborhoods are more likely to be burdened by industries that pollute the air, ground, and water, making environmental justice an important part of the equation as the country moves forward. Now, local activists and elected officials are pushing for legislation to address climate change and adapt to its effects while keeping Illinoisans working in a greener, cleaner future. Joining us now with more are Maya Dutta, Sustainability Coordinator for North Suburban City of Waukegan, and Eduardo Flores, a steering committee member of Clean Power Lake County. Welcome both of you to Latino Voices.
Thank you for having us.
Well, Eddie, let's start with you. What are some of the impacts of pollution and climate change have you seen in your community?
Well, first and foremost, the health impacts are one of the most important issues I see here in my community. 1 in 3 children here in Waukegan have asthma, and that's mostly due to the coal plant that we have, along with 5 EPA Superfund sites that are so polluted. All that, the cumulative impact, we start to see health impacts on our children, on our elderly, people who are most vulnerable. And so that's the issue we focus most on.
All right. And Maya, how should activists and legislators work with and include communities of color to address climate change?
I think that's a really good question. I don't think there is one specific answer for it. I think it's really important to remember that our communities of color are not monoliths. They often have a shared history of oppression, but also resilience. But then going forward, they have individualized views of what their present and future will be. So I think it's most important for activists and legislators to be looking at the specific communities they're working for and getting really into that community, talking with members of the community, talking to residents, talking to people that visit there often, and understanding best what they want and what they see for their future, especially as we look towards a greener and more just future for all.
And Eddie Flores, the fossil fuel industry is a big employer here in Illinois. How is your organization proposing to transition to clean power while keeping people employed?
Yeah, so we like to focus on trying to secure a just transition so that workers aren't just laid off when the inevitable happens and coal plants have to shut down. We want to have workforce hubs that focus in key areas of Black and brown communities, so that people who want to have these jobs they'll get all the training and everything paid for, as well as people who are working in this industry, they can transition and they're not just left out. They lose their livelihood and they have to find a new job.
And Eddie, let me ask you this. Have you seen any or felt any pushback from people who work in those industries, either against you or your organization?
I personally really haven't. I've seen industry and corporations do that, but more so the workers, not so much. They like the idea of having, being able to get all these trainings paid for, not having to worry about, how they're going to put money on the table while they're getting retrained and while they're like learning the whole process and the things that they need to be able to successfully function in those jobs.
Maya Dutta, the city of Waukegan is part of the newly unveiled Climate Action Plan. Can you tell us a little bit what that is and what the goals are?
Sure. So the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus and National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration went through a process over the last year or so to create the Chicago region's first ever Climate Action Plan. And it is focusing specifically on local government action that we can take to mitigate and adapt to the effects of climate change. So those are the two overarching goals: mitigate climate change and adapt to climate change. So mitigating climate change would mean decreasing greenhouse gas emissions, and adapting to climate change would mean increasing resilience of our communities. The Climate Action Plan is filled with a bunch of different strategies that outline how municipalities can pursue these actions and achieve climate action that is on a level that is appropriate for municipalities and local governments. And it also provides an opportunity for the suburban areas to collaborate with one another. And it also looks at social vulnerability and takes a special look at environmental justice issues.
Now, Maya, I do know one of the goals for that Climate Action Plan is to reduce emissions by 80% by 2050. Do you think that's an achievable goal?
I think if we have the ambition that it's an achievable goal, I think it's very important to say that it's not only on local governments, that it's at every level of government, legislation to make that happen. And we've been told that it needs to happen for the benefit of our people so we can all survive and have good lives. And so that being said, it's achievable because it has to happen.
You, when you work with Waukegan, how do you get more people of color involved in taking climate action, climate change as an important issue?
Sure. I think it's very important to just think about the community you're working with and identify areas where the community is already all in. So we think about different cultural events that the community of Waukegan is already taking part of. There's a specific community character that Waukegan has that the residents like to take part of. And we just have to make sure that we have climate messaging and environmental messaging within those different organizations and those different cultural events. And so I also think about the wonderful activists we have both at Clean Power Lake County, and we also have Faith in Place, which taps into our wonderful faith-based community in Waukegan, which is extremely strong. So it's really just thinking about what's already there and what the people care about, because everyone cares about having a better life going forward. And so it's not hard to sell climate change in that aspect. It's just making sure it's accessible, which also means making sure we have Spanish and English versions of all messaging that we put out.
Eddie Flores, I'll leave the last question for you. Earlier today, you took part in a rally for clean energy in Illinois with the Sierra Club and State Senator Cristina Castro. What are you hoping to accomplish?
Well, yeah, we want to make sure that we get a just transition for communities like mine. We don't want to end up with a 6 Superfund site here in Waukegan. And we want to make sure that we pass the governor's climate and equity bill. It's not just, the title may be the climate and equity bill, but it's not just about that. It's about jobs, it's about industry, it's about Black and Brown communities, health, the climate crisis, and future generations. So we want to make sure that we get that passed for the good of our planet.
Just really quickly, the last 20 seconds here, Eddie, how do you get people of color in your area to climb on board with fighting climate change?
Yeah, so I try and connect it with them. One of the things I usually like to ask is, since asthma is so common around here, I like to ask if them or anybody they know, any of their family members have asthma. And then I usually tie that into, the health impacts that we see here in Waukegan.
All right. Well, our thanks to Maya Dutta and Eduardo Flores. Up next, an exit interview with a Chicago commissioner with a 30-year career in city government. This week, the city slapped two big companies with nearly $1 million in restitution and fines for violating the city's sick leave law. Oreo maker Mondelez International and Tri-City Foods, owner of dozens of Burger King franchises. That effort was one of the final official acts for the commissioner of Chicago's Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, which is charged with making sure businesses are licensed and following the law and protecting consumers from fraud. Joining us now is the outgoing Commissioner of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, Rosa Escareno. Rosa, welcome to Latino Voices.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael, for having me.
As we just mentioned, the city just landed a major payout from two companies for violating workers' sick leave protections. Expect we'll see more settlements like this in the years to come?
Well, we hope not, but the goal for us is to ensure that the employers across Chicago abide by Chicago's labor laws. And we do a lot of work up front to make sure that we're working with employers and businesses across the city so that they fully understand. Our goal is not to be punitive. Our goal is to ensure that all these great policies that are really helping workers and helping our economy are basically, they're abided by.
Right. Before we get into more labor issues, for folks who don't know your story, your mother brought you and your siblings here at a young age. What prompted the move?
Well, my father actually had been a farm worker a few years in the United States. And upon his return on one of his visits, he passed away of an illness. And so my mother was left with a very difficult decision. And so chose, as my father had always wanted, us to actually come to the United States. So his death, unfortunately, is what triggered that move. But my mom was a widowed mother at that time with 6 children. My brother was 6 months, the youngest, and I was a child at the time. And that's what prompted us to come here, really searching for a better life, just like my father knew that his work in the farm world, and then eventually also worked in a couple of factories here in the United States. It's really what brought us here.
Rosa, did your mother inspire any of the work you've done?
Absolutely. I've been so privileged to be in the role of public servant. And I think throughout my years, it's always been about how do we give back. But specifically when we created the Office of Labor Standards late in 2018 and going into 2019, I've always thought about my mom. She would wake up really early in the morning, have to be at work by 5 a.m. And did that for years, standing up for about 30 years. And so every time I go into my work, specifically around establishing policy, drafting legislation, everything dealing with workers, not just my mom's story, but my mom's story is replicated thousands and thousands of times. We saw a lot of this, Michael, around the pandemic with our essential workers having to leave their families behind, putting themselves at risk so that they could really keep our city open. But their inspiration is their family. So I think this is the connection that I see when I'm in the position to help workers and improve the quality of life for those workers. But let me just say, it's about the workers, but it's really about how we all benefit as a city, because when we improve the benefits and life of workers, we improve our economy. And we all benefit from a stronger economy, especially right now.
Rosa, you started working for the city more than 30 years ago. Has it been challenging navigating changes in leadership, especially as Chicago's mayors are known for their strong personalities?
Well, let me just say, and I think people find this interesting, but I don't think I've met a tougher boss than my mother. And she is a woman with, really, really strong will. And so I think that working for other mayors have been a complete privilege for me to see the city transform. I mean, I started here in the late 80s, and look at Chicago today. You look at our city then and look at where we are today. This is the different mayors coming in and transforming our city, and really improving the quality of life of residents throughout our neighborhoods. And yes, do we have a lot more work to do? Absolutely. But I think every mayor has put in so much great work into making Chicago the great city it is today. This is why the labor protections that we have put in place since 2018, and even more to come, are just yet another way that we continue to improve our city to be even better than when I came into my job.
Now, Rosa, you originally planned to stay only for the first year of Mary Lori Lightfoot's term, then the pandemic hit. How emotional was it to work with the city's businesses and workers over the past year and a half?
Yeah, so, you know, it's been extremely difficult because of this personal, I always look at things from a very personal perspective. So in this job over the last 4 years, I've gotten to know many small business owners. You know, I tell people we had a podcast where we would bring in business owners to tell their stories so that other small business owners can learn from those stories. And so through this time, I've gotten to know so many individual stories, knowing that many of those businesses were calling me directly, struggling, knowing that their life's earnings were about to be lost during this entire, 16 months, really. And so it's been extremely difficult, but I've also learned something about entrepreneurs, is that they are so vibrant, that they don't give up easily. They are fighters. So I know Chicago's economy is going to be even greater than we were before the pandemic, because they are about the fight. They are about following that dream and not letting go. And so, yes, very emotional, but I also have so much confidence in that entrepreneurial spirit. And Chicago is a mecca for business. And so we need to make sure that we continue to foster and support our entrepreneurs, especially the small ones, because it's through those small ones that they grow. And I know you know this, Michael, that the majority of job creation across our country, and of course in our city, is through those small business owners. They're the ones that employ the majority of employers across our city.
Rosa, we just got about 30 seconds left. What are you going to miss most about working for the city?
I think it's that personal, bringing that services and improving quality of life in neighborhoods and people. We have an opportunity to make a direct impact. So I'm going to miss that, but I definitely want to be an active participant in the growth of our city.
Our thanks to Rosa Escareno.
Thank you.
Up next, details of a shared kitchen owned by a group of street vendors. Stay with us. Vendors are now officially the owners of a kitchen after having rented it for years. Under city regulations, street vendors are not allowed to prepare food at home and risk heavy fines if they're caught without a license. Chicago Tonight's Joanna Hernandez shares what owning a kitchen means for this group of vendors.
Every afternoon, Juan Jose Gama Garcia heads to work. He sells everything from tamales to corn, fruit, and Mexican candy. He has been a street vendor for 23 years.
Yo pienso que los vendedores ambulantes durante estos años nos hemos educado. Nos hemos, como dice un compañero aquí, que tenemos que reeducarnos, ¿verdad? Entonces, pues tratamos de llevar nuestras cosas limpias, ordenadas.
Gama Garcia is one of hundreds of vendors in Chicago who's had to adapt to changing city regulations over the years. Rules require vendors to have a license and also ban them from preparing food at home.
Sí, siempre hay zonas o barrios donde es más difícil, donde es más complicado, donde hay más inspectores que en otros lados. Algunos no tienen tantos problemas, otros tenemos un poquito más.
To follow city rules, Garcia and several others started renting a kitchen on 16th Street in South Lawndale. 6 years later, they can officially call this kitchen their own.
Nosotros creímos en el proyecto y fue difícil, pero lo logramos y aquí estamos. Bien, orgulloso de mis compañeros y de mí.
Gama Garcia is one of many members of the Street Vendors Association who've branched out and worked to bring the Cooperative Workers Shared Kitchen to life.
Está bien porque somos como unos pequeños empresarios que vamos empezando de abajo para arriba y a ver qué nos toca más al rato.
For Luis Melendez, a tamale vendor, the kitchen is a sign of change for his future.
Para mí, mi visión es de que aquí tengo mi oportunidad para mi vejez.
Their visions for their shared kitchen continues to grow. They're hoping to buy this lot to expand their commercial kitchen and get the community even more involved.
We got the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund to be able to fix and renovate the space here, and we would like to also expand because we have other programs we would like to offer the community and to integrate both communities together, the people of North Lawndale as entrepreneurs, and also be able to offer educational training with nutrition.
Ownership of the kitchen expands opportunities to offer other vendors assistance with licensing, law enforcement, investments, and retirement.
Depende de lo que quieras hacer. Hay varios precios. Esta mesa cuesta tanto, una parrilla cuesta tanto, una parrilla de ese por igual. Pero yo les he dicho a varios que es mejor ser socio y no estar rentando.
With years of hard work and sacrifice, they say the new business venture will open doors for vendors to chase the American dream.
Y sí, ser parte, si nuestras experiencias, si la cocina inspira a otros a tener también algo así, pues es una bendición, ¿no?
For Chicago Tonight, I'm Joanna Hernandez.
For more information on how you can get involved, head over to our website. The forces of gentrification can make people being priced out of their neighborhoods feel powerless. But the founders of Lolita's Bodega in Humboldt Park say residents have more power than they think, and it's in their pockets. Here, BRIANNA RAMIREZ-SMITH and MARISA DÍAZ-ARCE give La Ultima Palabra on what they say everyone can do to invest in their communities.
Yeah, all right, let's go. All right. Hi, I'm BRIANNA RAMIREZ-SMITH.
I'm Marisa Díaz-Arce, and
so
we are
Lolita. No, that doesn't work. And together we are
Lolita Productions. Oh, you wanted me to say it that time. We got this.
We got this. You get it? Wiggle it out. Hi, I'm BRIANNA RAMIREZ-SMITH.
I'm Marisa Díaz-Arce,
and together we are
Lolita Productions.
We are the co-creators of Lolita's Bodega here in Humboldt Park. We are co-jefas.
Yeah, comais,
neighbors.
Best friends.
Sisters, pretty much. Yeah. And Lolita's Bodega really is a Latinx pop-up market here in the heart of Humboldt Park. We began in 2019 as a way to stave off gentrification and pour back into our community. And we're very proudly Puerto Rican. And Humboldt Park is one of the last mainstays for us and our culture. And it's slowly being gentrified out.
You go through the park and you see families, you see sports, you see older people playing dominoes, people just hanging out. And it is so important that we continue to have that for future generations.
I believe the statistic is that 60% of all dollars from small businesses go right back into the community that they're in. And if you're spending money mindfully in your community, it allows you to stave off that small business from having to leave.
At the bodega, you are definitely going to find the vendors reflect the community. Clothing to art, creative wares like candles, incense. You would have jewelers, like my ring is actually from one.
My earrings are from an artisan, from a local artisan. Our t-shirts,
yep.
This is from somebody who lives on Division Street.
Some of them, unfortunately, due to the way things are going, have had to leave, whether that be their generation or the previous generation. And so if we just became more conscious of where we're putting our money into, we can definitely change the trajectory of what is happening to our neighborhood. That's the only way we're going to thrive, is if we invest in each other.
Be an active participant in your neighborhood. Actually put in some work and help out the community organizations that are struggling and working hard to make sure that the community is receiving the resources that it needs. If we don't do something about it, it's going to be done to us. And I would rather go out with a fight than sit here and allow something to happen to me.
There's a lot of magic happening in our spaces. Look for those places that have magic, because you can buy something that will be worth something a lot more later on, right from our own community.
Lolita's Bodega is back in action in Humboldt Park tomorrow. You can find more information on that and watch more in our La Ultima Palabra series on our website. And that's our show for this Saturday night. Be sure to check out our website, WTTW.com/news, for the very latest from WTTW News. And join Phil Ponce tomorrow night for Chicago Tonight Black Voices. He'll talk with local leaders about helping build equity in the recreational marijuana industry. Plus, how a Chicago calligraphist is sharing her passion to help others find theirs. And you can catch my reporting on 91.5 FM WBEZ. Next week on Latino Voices, Phil Ponce will be here in the host chair. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight Latino Voices, I'm Michael Puente. Thank you for sharing part of your weekend with us. Stay healthy, stay safe. Buenas noches.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm named on the 2021 expertise list of the best personal injury attorneys in Chicago.